Hi everyone, today we'll be discussing hearing. First, let's talk about what is sound. Sound is oscillating or rapidly changing regions of high and low air pressure. When these high and low air pressure waves hit your eardrum, it vibrates, and this is how we hear. A typical human can hear sounds between 20 and 20,000 hertz. So how do we hear this sound? Sound waves are received and transformed into neural signal by the ear, which is divided into the external, middle, and internal ear. So first, the external ear is made up of the pinna, concha, and auditory meatus, which you can see on the left side of this diagram. The function of the external ear is to get sound to the eardrum. Next is the middle ear, which you can see in this diagram. These structures help transfer airborne sound vibrations into the inner ear, which is filled with fluid. It does this by boosting air pressure nearly 200 times by the time it reaches the tympanic membrane or eardrum. Next, three small middle ear bones called the malleus, incus, and stapes connect the tympanic membrane to the cochlea at the stapes. Now we've gotten sound from outside to the middle ear, and now we're at the inner ear. The cochlea is the most important organ of the inner ear, and is unique because it's a very specialized organ that turns waves into neural impulses. The cochlea is a wound-up tube that looks like a snail shell, which you can see in the right of this diagram. The inside of the cochlea is lined with tiny hairs, and the cochlea is filled with fluid. When sound waves reach the inner ear, the hairs inside the cochlea will vibrate. Different sections along the tube respond to different frequencies. Let's imagine unrolling this tube so we can take a closer look. There are two ends of the cochlea, the base and the apex. The base of the cochlea is closest to the eardrum, and the apex is at the far end. The hairs in the base respond to high-frequency vibrations. These can be as high as 20,000 hertz. The hairs in the apex respond to low frequencies as low as 20 hertz. As we can see, different areas of the cochlea are organized to respond to different frequencies. This is called tonotopic organization. Tonotopic comes from the Greek word tono, which means frequency, and topic, which means place. Again, different frequencies correspond to different places in the cochlea. But how does the cochlea send this information to the brain? The cochlea is connected to the auditory nerve, which connects it to the brain. Depending on which hairs in the cochlea fire, like the ones closer to the base or closer to the apex, the brain can tell whether the sound is high or low frequency. From the cochlea, neural impulses are transferred to the cochlear nucleus, which is the part of the brain that serves as the receiving center of sound information. The superior olive and inferior colliculus are responsible for localizing or locating sound. For example, when you hear a loud sound, the superior olive directs your attention to it, possibly causing you to look towards the sound or to flinch. Lastly, the auditory cortex does most of the complex sound processing. It processes things like language sounds and pitch. The auditory cortex is the region in the brain that processes sounds. It's located in the temporal lobe. Once information reaches here, you get conscious perception of sound, which we call hearing. The auditory cortex allows you to experience things like music and hearing language. Damage to this area would not allow you to hear even if your ears are working perfectly. So as a summary, sound is oscillating regions of high and low pressure, and the ear is made up of three parts, the external, middle, and inner ear. The external ear gathers the sound, and the middle ear focuses and amplifies the sound so that it can go to the inner ear and be recognized by the cochlea, which is tonotopically organized. The cochlea sends information directly to the brain through the auditory nerve, and the auditory cortex is what ultimately processes sound.